It was late November, and I was driving home from a business trip, exhausted and eager to get home. The highway stretched out for miles with nothing but empty fields on either side. The wind howled against the windows, and thick clouds blocked out the moon. My gas gauge was nearing empty, but I kept telling myself I could make it to the next town. It was a mistake. My car sputtered and slowed before coming to a complete stop. I was out of gas, in the middle of nowhere. I cursed under my breath and grabbed my phone, but of course, there was no signal. The road behind me was as empty as the one in front of me. I scanned the horizon and saw a faint light in the distance. Maybe a house? I didn't have any other option, so I got out of the car and started walking toward it. As I trudged along the side of the road, the wind bit through my coat, chilling me to the bone. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Every few steps, I swore I heard faint footsteps behind me. But every time I turned around, there was nothing but darkness and the rustle of the wind through the fields. After what felt like an eternity, I finally reached the source of the light, a dilapidated old farmhouse. The front porch light was on, but the windows were boarded up, and the place looked like it hadn't been lived in for years. My heart raced as I approached the door, but I had no choice. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. My breath caught when I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned my head and froze. Standing just at the edge of the light was a figure, tall, thin, and gaunt, dressed in ragged clothes that looked like they were from another time. I couldn't see their face. It was hidden in the shadows. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. The figure didn't respond, just stood there, motionless, watching me. I turned back to the door and knocked again, panic creeping in. Finally, it creaked open, and an old woman appeared. Her skin was pale, her eyes sunken and tired. "You need to leave," she whispered, her voice raspy and strained. "I'm out of gas," I stammered. "Can you help me? Just enough to get to the next town." "No," she cut me off. "There's nothing for you here. You need to leave, now." Before I could say anything else, she slammed the door shut. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned around to look for the figure again, but they were gone. The night felt darker, colder. I started walking back toward my car, picking up the pace. The road was eerily quiet now, and every shadow seemed to stretch toward me. I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see that figure following me, but the road behind was still empty. When I finally reached my car, I froze in place. The headlights were on. I hadn't left them on. My hands trembled as I approached the driver's side door, which was now wide open. The keys were still in my pocket. I searched the car, every corner, every seat, but no one was there. My heart raced as I climbed in and locked the doors, my fingers shaking as I fumbled with the keys. Then I heard it, a loud thud on the roof. Something was on top of the car. I didn't wait to find out what it was. I slammed the key into the ignition, even though I knew I was out of gas. Somehow the engine roared to life, and I floored it. My eyes stayed glued to the rearview mirror as I sped down the highway, the lights of the farmhouse fading into the distance. I didn't stop until I reached the next town, pulling into a gas station where I finally collapsed in relief. The gas gauge still read empty, but the car had carried me this far. I never found out what happened that night or who or what was watching me, but I've never let my tank run low again. I had been driving for hours, desperate to make it home before midnight. The road ahead stretched on for miles, pitch black except for the faint glow of my headlights. It was one of those rural highways where you can drive for an hour without seeing another car or house, just endless road and fields. My gas tank was hovering near empty. I had seen the warning light come on about 20 miles back, but I was sure I could make it to the next town. Every sign seemed to promise a gas station just ahead, but the miles kept ticking by, and there was nothing but darkness. And then it happened. My car sputtered once, then twice, and slowly rolled to a stop. I was out of gas. I sat there for a moment, hoping maybe the car would miraculously start up again. It didn't. I checked my phone. No signal. Of course, in the middle of nowhere, that was to be expected. There was nothing for it. I'd have to walk. I grabbed my jacket and a small flashlight from the glove compartment, stepping out into the cold night air. The road was deathly quiet, and the only sound was the rustling of wind through the tall grass on either side of the highway. I hadn't seen another car in over an hour, but surely someone would come along soon. With no other options, I started walking, following the narrow beam of light from my flashlight. I don't know how long I walked, maybe 15 minutes, maybe 30. The highway stretched on with no sign of life. I was starting to second-guess my decision when I saw something up ahead, a figure standing at the side of the road, just beyond the reach of my flashlight. At first, I thought it was a hitchhiker, someone like me, stranded in the middle of nowhere. As I got closer, though, something didn't feel right. The figure wasn't moving. It was just standing there, perfectly still, almost like it was waiting for me. "Hello?" I called out, my voice breaking the silence. No response. I slowed my steps, uneasy now, my flashlight's beam flickering slightly as I pointed it at the figure. It was a man, tall and thin, wearing a long coat. His face was hidden in the shadow under a wide-brimmed hat. "Are you okay?" I asked, stopping a few feet away. The man didn't move, didn't speak. My skin crawled with a sudden, irrational fear. Something was wrong. I turned to leave, quickening my pace back toward my car. My heart pounded in my chest, and I forced myself not to look back. Just keep walking, I thought. Don't turn around. I could hear footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate footsteps, crunching on the gravel road. I broke into a run, my heart racing. The footsteps grew louder, faster. I was almost back to my car when I finally dared to look over my shoulder. The man was running after me. I sprinted the last few yards to my car, fumbling for the door handle, slamming it shut behind me. I locked the doors, panting heavily, my breath fogging up the windows. I looked out the windshield. The road was empty. No sign of the man. I sat there for what felt like hours, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. Eventually, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance, and I flagged down the car, grateful for the ride into town. But to this day, I can't shake the feeling that the man is still out there, waiting for the next stranded traveler to run out of gas on that lonely stretch of highway.